What's up, guys? Welcome to another podcast episode. And on this one, I'd like to talk about the book that I wrote back in 2017. Probably do a different video about the structure that I used to try and write that book. But in this podcast episode, I wanted to talk about the theme that I was trying to convey and share one of the stories that I use in the book. And the title is called The Weapon as Mind and Shield, 10 Lessons from Failure. It's a memoir, which is kind of like an autobiography. My goal with the book was to take a lot of the lessons that I felt like I'd learned throughout my life up to that point and put them into a book. My original idea was if I could go back in time to when I was like a little kid and put all the lessons that I had learned into one book and like give it to myself as a kid, what would I include? What were the most important things that I wish I knew growing up that I know now? So that was really the inspiration and the idea behind it. And also a lot of my favorite books have been memoirs, like RZA's was really good, and a lot of others. And the structure was pretty much like there's an overall theme, and then each chapter also stands alone with a story and a moral, but together all the chapters combined make up the general theme. So for mine, my idea is that you can kind of meld your mind as a weapon to attack the challenges that you face or achieve the goals that you set out for yourself. But at the same time, you can also make it a shield guarding against like people having negative feedback that's crazy, or even to help protect against your own anxiety and doubt and fear. So that was kind of the general theme behind it. The other integral idea to the book title is the idea that human energy is thought, and it manifests itself pretty much as anything in the physical world. So if you think about the energy of fire, for example, fire emits heat. So I argued that was the energy or heat. And it can do something good like cook your food, but it could also burn you to death. So there's this dichotomy. But the special thing about human energy or thought is that it can serve pretty much any purpose, unlike most other things. Like fire, it emits heat, but that's really all it does. And if you look in the world, human thoughts created like running water, government, this camera, this microphone, this clothing. It's pretty amazing when I started to think about all of the things that human thought can materialize into the world in all these different forms. So then those were kind of the bases for the theme that I wanted to try and convey, and through different lessons and stories show how failure to cultivate both a weapon and a shield with your mind can lead to bad things, and why it's important to try to do that, because I wanted to try to show that it wasn't a one-dimensional solution. Like take, for example, a lot of, I feel like really uber famous people, my argument was that were very good at turning their mind into a weapon. Like Steve Jobs is notorious for being kind of having a very difficult to deal with personality, and I think like his family life wasn't that great either. So like in that example, I would say he turned his mind into a really great weapon that could, help him achieve his success, but he wasn't able to cultivate the shield, and the balance is important. So with that being said, one of the stories that I wanted to share was about a person who, actually don't know them. It was a story about someone that was told to me from my martial arts teacher. But yeah, a story about someone who was able to cultivate their mind into a very effective weapon. But the thing about weapons, using another analogy, is like they need to have a safety. So a gun without a safety is dangerous. The same thing is like if you only solely focus your mind's energy into achieving your goals or turning into a weapon, as I use the analogy, it can become dangerous because you could turn that on to people that you care about, your friends, your family. You don't want to try to, hurt them with the weapon of your mind. I know that sounds kind of funny, but I do feel like it's true in a lot of ways, and it plays out. When you hear about it in the news, So I feel like that dichotomy and balance is really important. But to jump into the story, I was 12 years old when I heard this story. I was doing martial arts, and I had a really great teacher. He's one of probably the biggest mentors I've had in my life, and he had a profound effect on me as a kid. I write about him a lot in the book that I wrote. But so he would a lot of times try to reinforce his lessons on the techniques that we were learning, which are, they're self-defense, but they're also like dangerous. He always tried to make a point like these are life-taking techniques, but they should try to reinforce how precious life is, because we're being reminded how quickly life can be taken away through these techniques that we're learning, which I really liked. And as a kid, I was so young, my mind just kind of like took that philosophy in very easily. But one of the stories that stuck with me the most was he talked about a friend of his who was, in his words, one of the best martial artists in the world in this particular martial art that I was practicing. And he said that when he got married to his wife, they went on a honeymoon to South Africa, and they were at dinner at a restaurant, and two gunmen come into the restaurant, and they go around to each table, and they have the people at the table, give all of their valuables into this bag, whether it's like your watch, your phone, etc. So then they get to my teacher's friend's table. He gives them wallet, keys, phone, whatever. Then they get to his now, recent wife's possessions. She's giving everything up. And they get to her phone, and for some reason she didn't want to give up her phone. And I remember my teacher telling us, my friend had a choice in that moment. He wasn't being forced into a situation where he had to take violent action. He could have tried to reason with his wife and say like, hey, I know that you like your phone, but we can buy another one. But he decided to act and killed both of the gunmen in the room. But what he didn't know was that there was a third one waiting outside. So he kills the two gunmen in the room. The third one outside hears what's going on, comes in, shoots my teacher's friend, and that's the end of the story. And I remember him saying, never mistake the value of your life for your ego. That will, even if it's bruised, it will heal, or possessions, you can get more, or money. And that his friend would be on the mat training with us right now if he had not made that decision. And that sometimes you might have to take that kind of action, but don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary. And that was one of the stories that's always profoundly affected, I feel like, my psychology, especially hearing that so young at 12. And then he went on to say, my teacher said, how that third gunman is always there in every situation. You might think you have all of the facts and knowledge about a situation or a person, but there's always a chance that that third gunman is right outside of the room, and you should always think like that, because you never know always the situation that you're in. You don't always have all the information that you think you do, and don't gamble, especially your life, away needlessly. But when I was, fast forward a lot of years in my life, I'm trying to compile this book of lessons that I feel like are the most important things that I've learned, and that was definitely one that stuck out to me the most. I felt like it fit the theme very well, and it really did make a big impact on me. So hopefully that was interesting to hear. I will link the book to this video. It's also in my About section on my channel. But yeah, the book itself was just like, I always wanted to do it growing up. I always wanted to write a book, and there was just a point in my life when I had not a lot, but I had enough free time. It was really more, I had the motivation to sit down and write it, and it was a very cathartic experience. I feel like I reflected a lot on important lessons that I'd learned. I think it helped me understand myself better and the world around me. And it was a really rewarding experience. I would definitely encourage people to, it doesn't even have to be a book. You could do like a blog, you could do a podcast. I feel like reviewing your own experiences and trying to do it in a constructive way is really powerful. But yeah, I hope this was a good episode and people enjoyed hearing about those things. So thanks. I'll see you guys in the next one.